Hi everyone, I'm back. It's been a while, longer than I'd actually like to think about, but I was busy with medical school and life in general, so what can you do? In any case, you're here for a book review, so let's jump right into it. There's actually quite a funny story behind today's book choice. You see, for my comeback to the YouTube space, I wanted to review a book that was different from all the usual science fiction and fantasy books that I've covered thus far on the channel. So, there I was, scrolling through Audible's book catalogs, and I stumbled across a book titled Unsolved, as in Unsolved Puzzle, and I think to myself, wow, a mystery book. I haven't covered one of those on the channel. This is perfect. So I hit buy, download the book to my phone, and hit play, and about 2 paragraphs into the novel, I figured out that there was something very wrong. As most of you have probably already guessed, Unsolved was not the actual title of the book. Instead, what had happened is that my dyslexic brain got about 4 letters into the actual name of the novel, got lazy, and just slapped on the first word that came to mind using those first 4 letters and called it a day. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you're stuck with yet another fantasy book review. Much like most of the books I cover on this channel, Unsouled by Will Wight is merely the entry installment into a much broader fantasy book series titled Cradle. The series, up to this point, has a total of 11 books out in print, which gives it a fair amount of binging potential if you do end up liking this first installment. Unsouled is primarily a single protagonist-driven novel, and is for the most part presented through third-person past tense prose. The story of Unsouled is set in a sort of tribal fantasy setting, where we follow our protagonist from a very early age as he embarks on a journey of mastering the magical abilities of this fictional universe. Of course, as with most of these young adult fantasy novels, we soon learn that compared to his peers, our protagonist is sort of stunted in terms of magical abilities, and must therefore struggle harder and think smarter to overcome the challenges presented to him along his journey. Eventually, though, our protagonist realizes that most of what he was taught about the magical system and the world he lives in was wrong, and must therefore embark on a new journey to achieve true greatness and prevent a catastrophic calamity befalling his home. Yada yada yada, it's all a bit cliche, but in truth there are a couple of new ideas sprinkled around the story and a really interesting plot twist about halfway through the book that even I didn't expect, so it's still definitely worth a read. But if you want more info on that, check out my upcoming discussion/recap video on the book, since I wanna keep this review mostly spoiler-free. As with practically all shorter novels, the subgenre composition of Unsouled is rather simple. At its core are the dramatic elements, which drive most of the novel's plot, whether this is through dialogue between the book's various characters, or by the multitude of monologues from the protagonist. Although that being said, I must admit that the author did manage to really smoothly incorporate these elements of exposition into the various conversations, so you never really feel pulled out or have your immersion broken while you're reading. After that, we have quite a substantial amount of world building and fantasy elements, which is no big surprise given the genre of this novel. These are for the most part split between the world building tied directly to the narrative needs of this specific book, like the exploration of this world's magic system, the culture in which our protagonist grew up in, and the cultures of the people he meets along his journey, while the other, much smaller part is directed towards establishing the wider world of this universe to form the foundation needed for the subsequent installments in the series. Moving on to the smaller subgenre elements, let's start off by looking at the action. This is mostly made up of the segments in the story where our protagonist has to take everything he's learned thus far and push through to the next stage of his journey. Kinda like the trials in an RPG game that you have to pass to level up your character. While these action elements are definitely very important to the narrative of the novel, I thought that they were scattered a bit too sparsely through the book to warrant putting them in the core elements category. Lastly, there's also a handful of philosophical elements present in the novel, but since these are mostly connected to the one big plot twist I mentioned previously, I won't be going into more detail because that would be going into spoiler territory. In terms of final thoughts on Unsouled by Will Wight, I have to say I was quite pleasantly surprised by the novel by the time I finished it, even though I had originally picked it up by complete accident. I guess I'd rate it in the top half, if not the top third of my most liked fantasy books that I've read thus far, both in terms of writing style and storytelling. The protagonist is likable, his adventure is interesting enough to keep you engaged, but at the same time is simple enough so that you don't have to keep track of 1,000 subplots just to keep track of what's going on in the story. Unlike some other fantasy novels like Game of Thrones or the Stormlight Archives. So in that respect, Unsouled is quite a pleasant and relaxing read. I was also very happy with the audiobook narrator, Travis Baldry, even though this was my first time listening to one of his narrations. He's very clear, well-paced, and does a very good job adapting his voice to the various moods throughout the book, making the audio experience so much better than some of the monotonous narrations that you get with some other audiobooks. As for availability, you can get Unsouled in ebook, paperback, and audiobook formats, with the audiobook coming in at a length of 8 hours and the written versions at a length of 70,000 words or thereabouts. Perhaps the strongest attribute of Unsouled is its pricing scheme, which is, I'm pretty sure, the lowest of all the books that I've covered on this channel thus far. The ebook costs a mere $1, and with the help of the WhisperSync deal, you can tack on the audiobook version for only an additional $2. In my eyes, the $3 combined price tag for the ebook and audiobook versions makes this the best, low-cost entry into the world of audiobooks for any of you out there who haven't given them a shot yet. Obviously, those of you who already have Audible subscriptions are also better off picking up the novel through the WhisperSync deal and saving up your Audible credits for more expensive purchases. And then after that, we also have the paperback version at a price of just under $16. But as always, prices might have changed by the time you're watching this video, so I'll leave a handy dandy Amazon link in the description down below so you can check for current pricing, plus I get a bit of kickback if you do end up making a purchase through my link. And that's about it for this review. Thank you for watching, leave a like if you feel like it, and I'll see you next time.